Welcome back to the Amazon Investor Coalition. Each week for the last 6 months, Jonah Whitcamper and I have been hosting Zoom calls with sometimes 40-odd people where we provide a platform for some of the brightest and most effective activists from around the world to share how they have been advancing forest-friendly economic development in the Amazon region of South America. And we're now producing these calls into a podcast series. On this episode, we have Leonardo Letelier. Leonardo is from SITAWI, Finance for Good. It's one of Brazil's most active vehicles for impact investing. In 2019, they released a landmark report about impact investing in the Brazilian Amazon. They also launched Empréstimo Coletivo, a crowdlending platform that funds sustainable Amazon businesses. Finding investment-ready projects is no simple task, and their second investment round was finalized in hours. Join SITAWI founder and CEO Leonardo Letelier to hear their story.
So Leonardo, please join us. You know why I have invited you to this call. You're doing amazing things. Please tell us about yourself and your work.
Excellent. So thank you everybody for being here, and thank you, Jonah, for the invitation.
As well.
Excellent. So I'm going to talk a little bit about SITAWI. Try to be as synthetic as I can. So we are a nonprofit. We were founded in 2008. We operate something that in the US is known as DEFs. We call it philanthropic fund management. We also do impact investing, and we try to structure social impact bonds. We haven't been very successful at that one. We are the most impact investor, most active impact investor in Brazil in number of deals, not in amounts. We are impact first, and we do mostly loans. And we have a partnership with a consulting company that focuses on responsible investment advisory that donates 10% of the revenues to the nonprofit and uses the SITAWI brand. So you might see a lot of things going on under the SITAWI brand. Some of it is run under the nonprofit arm. Some of it is run under the for-profit arm. And this is what we call finance for good. So we span all the way from philanthropy to social finance to sustainable finance. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on the impact investing side per Jonah's request. But I want to recognize also Alex that's on the call from USAID. We have a partnership. Our first DEF was with USAID coordination in I think it was 2010 or something like that. But we've run some 40 plus funds and dispersed about around 60 million reais. So when we extend a loan, and we mostly do loans, not exclusively, but it's mostly loans, what we look for is recognized impact, ability to execute whatever they're asking money for, repayment potential, and ethical fiber. So we don't do startup, venture capital. I have a PowerPoint that's going to become the next Google. We've done 50 deals to over 40 organizations with 29 exits. An exit for a loan is quite simple, as they repay everything they owed. Out of the 29, 28 were straight loans, one was convertible. And we have, I think, 2 or 3 cases of default, but none of them very recent. We are pioneer in the crowdlending space in Brazil. We created an online platform called Plataforma de Empréstimo Coletivo that's focused on impact investing, crowdlending.
Translate emprestamento coletivo in the English.
Crowdlending.
Okay.
Collective loan or
yeah.
Crowdlending. That's what we use when we translate. We do it in rounds. So the first round was in June 2019. We mobilized around 1.5 million. 159 investors. It took us 58 days to raise all the capital. Some of that capital goes through the platform, and some I'm going to show you later through family offices or anchor investors. The conditions were 1% per month, monthly installments, 24 months in total. It was they had 4 months of no principal, just interest. Our second round was more recent, was in March of this year, just before COVID hit. We mobilized 3.3 million. Again, some of it through the platform, some of it indirectly. Same conditions, but it took us 24 hours to fundraise the whole amount, and we ended up with a waiting list of 65 people, around 600,000 reais of demand for loans. And this is an initiative in partnership with PPA, which is also funded and led by USAID. Alex can tell you more about it.
I just want to ask one thing. Could everybody put themselves on mute except for those who are talking?
So how does it work? We need subsidies, so donations, to set up or customize the platform for all the staff that's doing the operations, the management, marketing, origination, and due diligence, and the monitoring of the deals. Also, third-party suppliers, travel. This was before COVID. I assume there are going to be some travel later on, but probably less than we planned. And we also use, in terms of subsidies, some of that money for anchor investments in terms of seed capital to de-risk retail investors or increase their average return or what you might have. And when that money comes back, it can be used in another round, not necessarily the second round, but a later round of the crowd lending platform. And then we have retail investors. They put money, they get money plus interest through the platform. We have some family offices also putting bigger tickets and getting their money back as well. Some of these family offices or these investors on the top right can be the same ones providing subsidy on the far left. And these money flows through the platform to what in Brazil we call impact businesses. Probably the best translation would be social enterprises in English, but Brazil created its own lexicon tied to impact investment, so we have impact businesses. Right. On the second round, so the one that was focused solely on the Amazon, we had an open call ran by PPA with 201 applicants, 37 were interviewed. We did due diligence on 8 and selected 5, which were the 5 you just saw that went into the platform. We had from 1,000 to 50,000 reais in ticket size. The average was 6,000, so the average was around 1,000 US. And 80% of investments were up to 5,000. So the platform has an operating model that's geared towards providing access to impact investing to as many people as possible, to the retail investor, so that he or she can invest with their values, but also start using that insights in the rest of their financial transactions. So when they go to a bank or when they invest with other players, the idea is that they start asking more and more about what is happening to their money. We published a report, again funded by USAID, on impact investing in the Amazon. And what are our planned next steps? On the second semester, we'll likely make one general round. We possibly will make one Amazon round, but it's not set. This is my slide to 2021. In 2021, we're probably going to do 1 or 2 Amazon rounds, 1 or 2 general rounds, and possibly one green round, which might merge with an Amazon round, with larger deals in coordination with a pilot fund that is under design and possibly will be launched in 2021.
Could you just, and you've touched on it previously, could you explain how you originate the investment opportunities?
So we have we are part of PPA. This is done in partnership with PPA, and PPA has a call for proposals for an accelerator that's run by DESAM.
Tell us what PPA stands for and what it is.
PPA is Parceiros pela Amazônia, Partners for the Amazon. It's a USAID funded and led initiative for private sector engagement. So this is what Alex does. That's his day job. And Natura is part of that. Natura & Co, Coca-Cola, I think Berac is as well, a bunch of local organizations and also large national ones. And one of their initiatives is an accelerator that's run by IDESAM. It's a local NGO. And what we did is, within their program, we included our criteria and also tried to identify organizations that were more mature than the acceleration stage and ready to take up a loan. But we also have our own network of partners in the region. We also have an office in the region, by the way. One of the programs we run in those philanthropic fund managements is in Medjugorje. And so we have partners on the ground that with whom we can source deals.
This is Ruben. I was just curious if you can talk a little bit more about what the deals look like in terms of what the investments are used for, if there's any general.
Yeah. So I thought we were gonna have the numbers here. We don't. It can be like $150,000, $30,000 to a co-op as working capital. It can be changing the business strategy, the intermediation strategy of Tucum that works with indigenous arts. So they used to buy and resell, and now they want to become a marketplace. In Oca Juices, it's market expansion, and Prática Engenharia also market expansion. So varied. Typically shorter term, more visibility of where the money is coming back from. Not necessarily guarantee, but we tend to be pragmatic in terms of who we lend and where the money to repay is going to come back from.
Jonah, this is Alex. I would just comment on this as a compliment what Leonardo is saying. The ticket size that we have identified for those startups are really small compared to what one would think that, maybe, $1 million it's a lot of money to any of these businesses. So wasn't a surprise, but the study that SITAWI did for us, which Leonardo just showed, that demonstrated that the real need for the Amazonian people, those right there, are not in a million figures. For them to be helped, they need small tickets, and we need to set it up the right system. So I think SITAWI has been able to do it very successfully, and it's still, for us, it's a learning process. We're learning a lot because we're doing this this is the second year we're doing it. So, but we already have on the database 30 Amazonian startups that's been selected by our program, acceleration program that SITAWI just presented. But it's very interesting because it's not in the millions. These people, they really need some small amount that will make a really real difference in their lives and impact.
Okay, I want to open it up a little bit now. So there is one issue that we haven't talked about, but it is going to be a big focus of this emergent coalition, and that's the question of rule of law. In order for the business environment to operate successfully, the legal environment and the demilitarized environment needs to be in place. Dave Martin, I was going to read off those pillars of rule of law work.
Hi, everyone. Sure. So I just want to start with saying this is a work in progress, and Jonah and I understand the real significance and importance of rule of law when considering everything from conservation work to investing. I'd like to invite everybody to join this group. I saw that there was a question in the chat if we've gotten started on this. So feel free to reach out to me and Jonah if you're interested in collaborating on this. But when I was thinking about this, and this was just kind of an off the cuff brain dump, if you will. But I think it's a good idea before we jump into anything is to understand, how you even define the rule of law, what qualities a society has if it has a strong rule of law. And, I just, for example, right now on this call, I Googled, there's many definitions out there, but some of the ones that Jonah and I are thinking about is societal transparency and free press and enforcement capacity, like the ability to monitor what's going on. The legal infrastructure that set trust in government and those enforcing the law. You could also call that community buy-in. The quality of the laws themselves, everything from legislation process to stakeholder involvement. And there's many more. And then, of course, the Amazon is a big place. So certain regions will probably have, more institutions or space that is really definitive of rule of law. And later on top of that, I would just say that, I engage in philanthropy myself when I work for Mongabay, which is an environmental journalistic outlet. You have to consider what organizations are working on these elements in an effective way, how to support that, whether it's through advocacy or legal assistance, applied technology, protected area creation, media production, journalism, community support and organizing, scientific research, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways to go about supporting that strong rule of law. It's a big nut to crack. So I'm inviting collaboration here.
And just to give context, so there are going to be 4 outputs of this emergent coalition. And one of them is going to be a survey where we ask a lot of the big funders in the Amazon conservation space, what rule of law grant making are you doing? Because we think that we can point out needs, unmet needs, and inspire some donors to fill in those needs. So that's why categorizing is the first step in analyzing it.
Jonah, this is Amy. Sorry to jump in. Just one question is, are you also interested in some of the standardized indexes like the doing business? That is a nice framework for looking at least on the investment side, like doing business indicators that have been developed for Brazil. So that's just one thing to look at. It includes rule of law in the case of things like, processing to, paperwork to set up businesses, and there's a bunch of different indicators. So that's like one thing to look at. But on the governance side, there's, my background is more on the community-based side. So, community governance, how community decisions are made, how communities are engaged in the decisions around investment, around land use, around anything that impacts their resource and land rights. And I don't mean to be a one issue focused thing, but that community governance piece is really important, and that it's inclusive decision making, participatory decision making, and we do a lot of that in our community-based mapping and land documentation work. So that what kind of documentation communities have, whether or not they have legal recourse, what kind of disputes there are, whether or not how those disputes are resolved. That piece is really important because a lot of companies, USAID recently did a report a couple years ago saying that they looked at a whole series of investment vehicles, and one of the biggest barriers was conflict, land disputes and conflicts that ended up stopping investment.
Are there other people who have rule of law questions or ideas?
I'll just say from EDF's perspective, Environmental Defense Fund, we've been involved more on the indigenous land rights issue and helping a group of communities to defend their land rights, including through legal actions and law enforcement actions. So that's just one piece of this, but that's something where we have a long history.
Can you just give us a little bit of color on the law enforcement actions? Have you guys been funding the training of local police forces, something like that?
Not directly, but supporting, through other organizations and indigenous partner organizations, helping them to have their own monitoring capacity, being able to access satellite, data on incursions, and then be able to connect that information with for example, the federal prosecutor's office. Great. So actions can be taken.
Okay, we have just a couple minutes left. We'll have another phone call next week. We'll have a larger phone call that is sometime in the future that'll be 1 hour focused on one issue. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Amazing presentations. They'll be packaged and made available for others. Any more questions about this process or from any of the speakers about rule of law?
I had a question earlier for Danielle. It was about, you talked about NGOs that were not so good. There has been a lot of discussion in the last year about NGOs that were acting in bad faith in Brazil. And there was a lot that was not really true. It was a lot of rumor mongering and such. It'd be really helpful to know what were your real experiences and what are some ways people can actually really distinguish between the ones that have acted in good faith, the ones that are doing the really good work, and that's the majority in my opinion and belief. But there are bad actors in every industry and in our space, and when there's one or two or three that are bad, it makes everybody look bad, right? It confuses people, it draws attention in a way that is not helpful, and it really affects the cause. So it'd be really interesting. You don't have to do it in this call, but I was curious when you talked about it, but I didn't want to take the presentation off course.
Do I have time for that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I think there are two aspects. One is the profile, which doesn't have anything to do with being bad or good. And that was the most important aspect that we took into account to create a specific institute, which is the market-driven perspective. So we have the experience we had was with good and bad NGOs that didn't have the market DNA or the willingness to. So they were more interested on protecting and taking care of But if you want to serve a market, you need to obviously take care, but at the same time being competitive, being accurate, offer to the market the quality the market is looking to pay for. So that's a characteristic, not being bad or good. And the ones that we also find not being as good, and that's not part of the characteristic, but it's a part of the profile, are for institutions that obviously when the project is over and they need to justify themselves in a way that they need to find another project just to to continue, and then the mission is gone. So they were, when, for instance, we had discussions where the first topic was when the money is coming in, so not about the objectives and the KPI. Obviously, we need the resources to run the projects, but there are institutions that they try to justify themselves by just, existing. And I believe that there are institutions that, they were created, they have a mission, and maybe they shut down because their mission is completed, So that's only my perspective of one part is being good or bad, and another thing is the profile and the characteristic, let's say.
So in terms of what you needed for what served the purpose of the work you were doing within.
Yes, this market connection profile.
Okay.
Yes.
That's thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Okay, great, everybody. Let's give an applause for everybody.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
you.
both of you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
A great week.
See you.
Bye, Kelly. Thank you for hosting.